There's my guy, Anthony Armstrong, in the house here on this Friday. It's Eagles Commanders Week. I got to have you on, Anthony, and from the Believe Podcast Network. I do recommend tuning in and listening to him give his Commanders takes because you had a few spicy ones after last week's game.
Man, I tell you, well, first of all, thanks for having me back, man. I apologize for being a little tardy.
Oh, you're fine.
But hey, we're here. We're here. It's Friday morning. It's Monday Night Football coming up, man. I'm glad to be back. Last time I was here, Philly whooped our ass, man.
to put it modestly, yes.
We not trying to do that again. You know what I mean? We're not trying to do that again. But I think it's going to be a solid matchup for these two teams.
Yeah, you know what? I actually think it's going to be a better matchup this time around, and I think a lot of that has to do with Taylor Heinicke getting rid of the football a little faster than Carson Wentz. I don't know what the deal was that first game, but I feel like Washington's offense, as badly as they looked at the end of the game on Sunday, they've been moving with more fluidity. Don't you think?
Absolutely, yes. Ever since they've welcomed Brian Robinson to the offense and brought him in there and started to work him in, the balance has returned to this offense. When you look back at that Week 3 matchup, there was about 43 passes for Carson Wentz compared to about 20 some odd runs, and that is not a ratio of pass to run that you want to have going against Philly. And I think that recently Scott Turner's balance and play calling, play choices have brought those numbers to a more even level, and that's the type of attack you need to have going against Philly. And I think that Taylor Heinicke can execute that game plan and see if they can get the ball into the end zone.
What do you think happened in Sunday's loss? Because I felt personally, I was like, oh man, they're going to be 5-4, like they're going to be right back in this race, and then all of a sudden, boom, like the Vikings just woke up.
Man, honestly, that was something where Washington kind of woke them up and gave them an opportunity. They had that game in hand. And, the interception that Heinicke threw, people like, oh, there he goes throwing a bonehead pick. Honestly, that wasn't a bonehead interception. It was just kind of a couple of, bad things happening. He had pressure right up in front. Ball sails a little bit. If you're being picky as a receiver, I say, well, hey, Logan, come on out of that break. You might be able to make that catch. And I think Taylor passed up a short pass. He's trying to go for a little bit deeper route there. So it was just one of those unfortunate situations. Harrison Smith makes a good play, but at the end of the game where they ended up rushing over the center, that was a playoff effort. That was Ridgeway trying to make a play for his team and ended up, commits a personal foul. I'm sure you can't do that, but I'll take a penalty over effort rather than a penalty over lapse of judgment anytime. So I think this team is trending in the right direction, even though they did drop that game.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? That penalty just ultimately sucked because I would like to see them get the ball back with about I think it was 2 minutes and 12 seconds left at that point, and Vikings just got to run down the clock to 16 seconds, and I'm starting man, they're not even going to get a chance. And they tried the whole you've seen NFL primetime and Chris Berman makes fun of the last play of the game, whoop, whoop, and I'm like, well, that's it.
Yeah, once you realize and you did the math, I'm sitting at home, you're like, okay, that's 30 something and 30 something. Like, there ain't gonna be enough time left, and it's so frustrating to sit there and look for the last minute and a half or 2 minutes, whatever it is, and you see the clock ticking down. So I mean, it's a good game by Minnesota, but the past 4 games, Washington's been playing well, and I think they're gonna be all right coming into Philly.
Yeah, a month ago, we're worried about, is Ron Rivera going to be the coach after this year? I still think it's going to be 50-50, but he's definitely improved his chances over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's definitely been a consistent, presence and somebody that's kind of steady the ship through just such a crazy storm that's just been going on. I mean, there's always news with this organization, and I think that, frankly, he's been the perfect person to guide you through that. Obviously, everybody wants to get wins on the field, and that's going to come. That's going to show up, but the off-the-field stuff is something that no other coach in the NFL has to deal with, and frankly, I think that's why people kind of shy away from going to that organization right now, because there's just so much to deal with off the field. You can't even focus on playing football.
I was kind of laughing at the whole major announcement thing. I remember I got the PR yesterday. I'm like, major? And I'm like, what is Snyder finally going to sell the team? Because I feel like that's all I've been writing about the last couple of weeks with them. It's Overall, though, what do you feel about Dan Snyder? It does look like he's going to sell at some point.
I mean, at this point, it's one of those common denominator things. You look back over the past however long, 22, 23 years he's on the team, and there's been some success here and there, but for the most part, there hasn't been any. And then you look at the most recent history. I mean, obviously the workplace, toxic workplace investigations and now financial improprieties, and then you got Congress involved, and everybody is just pointing at you to say, hey man, we're not going to work with you until you're gone. We're not going to work with this team until you're out. And it is for the better of it's better for the league. It's better for him. It's better for everybody that loves burgundy and gold. It's good for everybody to part ways at this point. And it's time. It's time to go ahead and let that go. I mean, you even have a player on the team that's saying there's been a dark cloud over the organization. That's Benjamin St. Juice that was saying that, speaking up and letting that out. But it's just one of those things where it is time. It's time. I try to stay away from, ownership changes because that is well above my pay grade. And it's just like yelling into a megaphone, I'm yelling into traffic, I should say. So if it happens, a lot of people are going to be very, very relieved, and it'll be a happy day. Now that after that, you got to get back to winning football games.
Do you want them to go back to DC proper, or are you okay if they build a new, I guess a new FedEx Field? I guess is what they're thinking of doing.
Man, I wanted to go to DC. I want these guys to go. I wanted to play in RFK. I never really had that opportunity to do so, but that was definitely something that I wanted to get the opportunity to do. But I think DC Commanders sounds so much better than Washington Commanders. And not trying to be rude, but I think DC Commanders sounds really good. If they could get back to DC, that'd be amazing.
See, yeah, that's the thing for me too, Anthony. So I'm looking at it as, and look, they got an XFL team coming back, right? The DC Defenders. I'm going to go to one of their games next year because I'm curious to see how football is at Audi Field, in the Navy Yard, in DC, and I think I'm gonna tie it to the Commanders. Like, okay, like this needs to happen. I agree with you. I think they need to go back into the city. I'm not a FedEx Field fan at all. And I think the one thing I hate about most is getting in and getting out. I don't know how you experienced it as a player.
Well, I mean, it was definitely, it's a long drive from the facility. I mean, you got to drive about an hour to get out there. And it is so far. I don't have no problem with FedEx. I mean, shoot, PG County. I love PG County. My wife's from PG County. But in relation to the stadium, I mean, I think now you think that now you have the Ravens, so like half of Baltimore, north part of Maryland takes that team, and then most people that seem to be Washington fans, a lot of them are in Virginia. So you're pulling from both directions. If you try to put that new stadium down there in like Dumfries or wherever they're talking about, that's like an hour the other direction. So I feel like you're not going to get anybody to go to the game that are coming from the north side of town. So it's a tough thing. I think if they can find a way to get back into DC, make right with the mayor and the rest of the city council people, that'll be the best. I would definitely try to get back and go to a game. I mean, I'm gonna try to get back to the game, period, but definitely would love for them to be playing in DC.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? I'm glad you mentioned Dumfries because I was thinking the same thing. Like, well, I don't think that solves the problem. It's like you said, they need to be. If they want to go outside the DC area, you go to Arlington or Alexandria or something like that. You're not going to Dumfries. Like, as someone who's driven to Myrtle Beach plenty of times, like Dumfries, really? Like, you know how hard it is to get there. It's sometimes I feel like the Snyder and them that they're just out of touch.
Man, it's one of those things that definitely it's more money that's involved than I would even know what to do with. Just to imagine, like, you have to find some land, but then you have people, the council members that aren't really trying to work with you, so where you could probably get much better locations if it was a different ownership group, or if you had a different relationship with the city, then more than likely they'd get the opportunity to put a team in a better location. So I think they'll eventually work their way into getting to a more favorable location. Ideally, something closer into DC, closer to the city, especially if Ted Lerner becomes an owner. I know his name was floated around, the owner of the Nationals. So I'm sure he'd want to keep the team somewhere close to where his baseball team is at.
Yeah. And can you imagine, though, if they played in the Navy Yard? Or I assume the Navy Yard still has some room. I mean, it feels like they've been building constantly there over the last 15 years. But what do you think overall, if they would move to DC, what what would that do for not just the franchise, not just fan engagement, but they're already a rich franchise already. Like, how do you think that changes the long-term effects of them as a competitive football team?
Man, I tell you, getting back to DC, it will get back to some of those old glory days that I would hear so much about. I mean, you hear about RFK Stadium, how it'll be rocking and literally moving as they're playing against the Cowboys and yelling, "We want Dallas." And I think that the energy would be just so high if they got to play games down there in DC. Now, the fact is, are you going to be able to find enough space for it in the city? I don't know. And I apologize. My kid just woke up. He's very demanding. This guy wakes up and is like, "I want milk." I'm like, "Come on, man. You got to chill out."
Hey, you know what? I don't blame him. I want my OJ. So I'm with you on that, Anthony. But overall, I'll give you a second. Yeah, so,
sorry.
No, you're good, man. Hey, I'm the same way. When I want my orange juice, I want it.
Hey, I feel it.
I've breaks to get orange juice before, so I'm with you on that. I'll blame your kid one bit. But overall, though, when you look at this Commanders team, the second half of the year, their schedule, in my opinion, is absolutely brutal. So when they got that Minnesota, Philadelphia back to back, I'm like, okay, they have to find a way to split here. Mm-hmm. If they don't beat the Eagles, do you consider their playoff chances dead?
Yeah, shoot. It's almost like you would say that, but I think things are just playing so close that there may be some off-the-wall opportunity that they can get in there. I've been preaching that I'm a fan of wins. I'd rather you win a ball game and then end up with a 16 or 15 or 12 pick or something like that, rather than just try to tank and be as high in the draft as possible. That hadn't worked for the past 20 years. Forget about it. Let's just put wins on the board. The four games: Minnesota, Philly, Houston, and then I think New York. Those are the four games I felt that they had to at least go 2-2 and find a way they could steal a game from Philly or Minnesota. And I was thinking it was going to be that Minnesota game. So now they've dropped that one, and then they're going up against a tough Philly team. So I think the best case scenario for next three games, it would be to go 2-1, drop the one against Philly, overall be 2-2. So if you stay in that 2-2 range, you give yourself a chance. If they find a way to go 1-3 over these, counting Minnesota, and then the next three games, then I think they might be a little bit too far outside looking in.
Yeah, Washington too. They haven't played the Giants. I think they got them twice, if I'm not mistaken. They play them, take a bye, and then play them again. That's right. They're the ones that have that kooky bye week sandwich. Don't you feel like those two games especially can determine? Did I lose you?
Well, yeah, simply because those teams have not played each other. And I think that the frustrating thing for both of those organizations is that they've kind of watched each other from a distance, and you're like, wow, New York's off to this hot start. Now they're kind of starting to, falter a little bit, have a couple injuries here and there. And then Washington just went on a recent little bit of a run. So the team that started the year for Washington, this isn't the same team. This is a different team. And then, I think New York, people are kind of catching up to what they're doing. I mean, obviously they have a lot of injuries, and they're still trying to, get some bodies to play receivers. So whenever they match up, it's definitely going to be key. If Washington can find a way to knock out both of those games, that'd be huge. But playing a team when you sandwich a bye week, the good part for Washington is that they have the bye, and they get to have familiarity on both sides of it. But for New York, they have to play a different opponent in between when they come back and then play Washington.
Have you offered your services yet to play for the Giants? Because it feels like they got a new receiver every week.
Man, every time I see a receiver get hurt, I kind of look at my phone and just see if somebody going to send me a text, like, hey, can you still run? I think about it. I'm like, you know what? I could probably play about 15 to 17 snaps in the right situation and probably avoid pulling a hamstring. So I stay ready, Jeff. I stay ready just in case somebody needs a little bit of help out there at their receiver position.
I was joking with Deshaun the other week. I'm just like, hey, man, you can still beat everybody. There's no doubt about that. But how are the glutes going to feel when you're done? He goes,
yeah, that's the tough part, man. That's the tough part. I mean, the amount of work that they do to get ready to play, it's difficult to just jump back in and just have the most impact.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Because you're running at full speed. Everybody's like, they jog. I'm like, no, they definitely do not jog. That is a strategy ploy. I'm like, you guys, I don't know how you guys could play so fast all the time and just. I know you guys get injured, but I just don't know how you do it every single snap.
Man, you got to train that way. I mean, you think about it, the average play is like three seconds or so. So you're sprinting, and as a receiver, I got to run maybe 30, 40 yards and turn around and jog back to the huddle and do it again. So it gets down into the science. We're talking about the anaerobic, system, the way the energy is translated into the body. And you train that, man. You train that. You really work in the off season, the lifting weights and the running and the conditioning to build up the ability to work hard and sprint at full speed. Your aerobic system helps you recover so you can do it again over and over again. I've taken my strength and conditioning certification, so I've learned this whole system.
Don't you wish, though, you had like the Theragun products and all that after like I talked to Devonta Smith this week, and we were talking about that. He actually gave me a Theragun. Theragun company did, and I'm like, wow, this thing is like, it's a game changer, right? Every time you score, it feels like your injuries go away. Don't you wish you had that, though, like after a game?
Man, I tell you, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm not the only one that feels this way, but I personally feel like I'm always in between a couple of technologies, right? Like I got into, you did dial up DSL and, cable. Same thing with the Theragun. Uh-oh. There we go.
Yeah, you're good.
Same thing. Oh Lord. I got an angry kid.
I gotta let you go to him too, because we're kind of on the break. So anyway, if you want to finish up here, are you good?
No, you're good. I think there we go. So basically, Theraguns are great. I mean, it's awesome to have that stuff and help your body recover and to get you back on the field. I didn't know about that stuff when I played. I was just out there just banged up and hurting. But nowadays, players are Theragunning at 5 years old. So definitely get yourself a Theragun or some sort of foam roll. You got to take care of your body, folks.
Yeah. All right, Andy. Once again, I might have to have you on next week too, but I got to get a quick prediction here for you. What do you got Monday night?
Man, I tell you, I want Washington to win. It's an 11-point game. They're 11-point dogs. I think that they can cover that, but it's going to really come down to if they're able to keep Philly out of the end zone. I think ultimately Philly probably gets this one, but it's a closer game than people expect. Give me 27-24 Philly.
Think Jalen Hurts is going to be the difference?
He always is. I mean, he's a good player. The difference, like I said before, though, is this is the same Philly team as they've been all year, and they just keep finding ways to win. Eventually, it's going to catch up to them. It's a whole new Washington team. If that defense can keep Philly out of the end zone and then find a way to get into the end zone, they'll give themselves a chance to win. I think it comes down to the last minute and a half. Taylor Heineke will have the ball.
All right, yeah, I'll let you go, man. I'll tell you what, as someone, I don't have kids, but I know I have a lot of good friends that have them, and when they call, you got to answer, man. So, once again, I appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys.
All right, sounds great. I'll talk to you soon.